All right, so the this slide is going to be a really good one to study for your quiz on Monday. So it just kind of summarizes what we talked about yesterday about the general characteristics of each kingdom. So here are our 6 kingdoms: animal, plant, fungi, protist, bacteria, and archaea. And as we did in our yesterday, talked about how do they get food, how many cells are they made out of, and are they eukaryotic or prokaryotic. And so we'll just sort of summarize in this table. So hopefully you remember a bunch of this. So starting off with how do they obtain food. So what are the 2 words that we're going to be using to fill in here? Eva? Heterotroph?
Heterotroph and autotroph.
Yes, heterotroph or autotroph. Those are our 2 options, or we might say both. So starting with animal, raise your hand if you could tell me, what word should we put in there for animal? Jordan? Hetero. So heterotrophs have to eat other things. They have to get their food from somewhere else. So animals have to eat other things. They are considered heterotrophs.
Is it okay if you just put an H there?
That's okay, as long as you know what it means. Somebody else. Plants. What should we fill in for plants in terms of getting food? Claudia? They are autotrophs. Plants use photosynthesis. They make their own food using sunlight. How about fungi? Ava?
Autotroph?
Heterotroph.
Really?
Actually,
Wow.
yeah. Remember, what do fungi, we'll talk about this in more detail, but they decompose. They're eating like dead logs and dead organisms. They don't make their own food. They have to decompose other things. So they're heterotrophs. Protists. Protists kind of a strange one. Jenna? Yeah, they can be both. So there are some protists that are heterotrophs, some are autotrophs. Some individuals can do both. Bacteria. Brandon? They also can be both. Some bacteria are autotrophs, some are heterotrophs. And then archaea. Yeah?
Heterotroph.
They're actually autotrophs. They can make their own energy. We'll talk about how in a few minutes. Number of cells. So what are the 2 terms we're going to use here for number of cells? We use 2 words. Savannah?
Wait, it's like unicellular
Unicellular?
or multicellular?
Correct. Unicellular, multicellular. So are they made of one single cell or many cells together? So how about animals? How should we fill this in? Trista?
Multicellular.
They're multicellular. About plants? Ava?
Multicellular.
Also multicellular. Fungi are a little strange because there's just a couple that are unicellular, but most are multicellular. So they can be both. You could write both if you'd like. How about protists? Protists. Jenna?
Single-cellular.
Yes, they're unicellular, single-celled organisms. How about bacteria? Unicellular or multicellular? Mia? Unicellular. And archaea? Grace? Unicellular. Last, eukaryote or prokaryote. Eukaryotes, what does that mean?
Have no memory.
U rhymes with do. Eukaryotes do have a nucleus. Pro rhymes with?
No.
No. Prokaryotes have no nucleus. All right? So animals. How should we fill in animals here? Luke?
Eukaryote.
They're eukaryotes. How about plants? Claudia?
Eukaryote.
Also eukaryote. They do have a nucleus. Fungi. Sophia?
Pro.
No, they are eukaryotes also. Protists. Mia?
Eukaryote.
Eukaryote. All right, bacteria. Hey, fella? Yeah, these are prokaryotes. Remember, bacteria are small, very simple cells. In Archaea? Luke?
Eukaryote.
Also prokaryotes. All right, so that's a little summary there for each of our kingdoms. Now, there is a level above kingdom for classification. What is it? Above kingdom. Sophia?
Domain.
Domain. Domain is a group above kingdom. And there's how, do you remember how many domains I said there were? Brandon? There's 3. Okay, so all these kingdoms are split into 3 domains. All of these, animal, plant, fungi, and protists, are all together in one of the domains. That domain is called eukarya. Why do you think it's called that? Mia?
Because they're all eukaryote.
Yeah, they're all eukaryotes. That's what's one thing that sets them apart from the other groups. And then there's 2 other domains, but they match up right with the kingdoms. There's a bacteria domain, and there's an archaea domain. So we're going to spend quite a bit of time talking about protists and plants and animals. We'll just briefly spend some time talking about archaea, bacteria, and then fungi. Today we're going to just talk about archaea and bacteria because it'll only take us a few minutes. Before we get there though, I have the classification of 5 different organisms. A human, a chimp, a house cat, a lion, and a fly. So here's their classification from domain all the way down to species. So let's look at these questions. First of all, which 2 groups do these 5 organisms have in common? Which taxonomic levels are they the same? Ava?
Eukaryote.
Yeah, they're all eukarya, and what else?
Animals.
And animals. So they're all the same domain and kingdom. Now, I listed their classification, but I didn't list their scientific names. Who could tell me, what's the scientific name for a lion? Luke?
Curious Leo.
But it's blank here, and I didn't fill it in. How do you know that?
Because the first name is the genus and the second is the species.
Exactly. A scientific name is made of the genus and the species. So yeah, a lion is Felis leo. Humans are Homo sapiens. A chimp is Pan troglodytes. Make sure when you're writing these, you write them properly. The rules. Capitalize the genus. You don't capitalize species. You capitalize the genus, the H here, the P there. You don't capitalize species. What's the scientific name for a house cat? Jordan?
Please catus.
Yeah, Felis catus. feels Leo is a lion. Housefly is Musca domestica. Sophia?
Not for the lab thing, if you didn't write the name right, would you get paid off?
Probably. All right, so Ayla just told us all of these 5 species, even though they might seem quite different from each other, a fly, a lion, a cat, a chimp, a human, they do have 2 of those groups in common, like Ayla said, the domain and the kingdom. They're all in the eukarya domain, and they are all in the animal kingdom, which means they have some things in common. So, because they're all in the same domain and kingdom, what do they have in common? What traits? Jenna?
They're multicellular.
Yes. All of them are multicellular. What else do they have in common? Man?
Eukaryote?
They're all eukaryotes. And what else, Eva?
They're all heterotrophs?
Yeah, they're all heterotrophs. So last question on this. Which 2 are the most closely related out of these 5? Which are the most closely related? Alex?
House cat and
What? How do you know that?
because they have the same.
Yeah, they are the same genus. None of these other organisms are in the same genus. A house cat and a lion are both genus Felis. So that means they're closely related to each other. All right, let's talk a little bit about these Archaea. Now, a lot of this will be things we've already said, but we'll just sort of summarize. So Archaea is in what domain? Archaea. What kingdom? Also Archaea. How many cells are these organisms made out of? Michael? 1. They're single cell, unicellular. Give me a word about their nucleus. Grace?
And the prokaryote.
Prokaryote. They have no nucleus. And no other organelles also. Their nutrition are autotrophs. They get food through a process called chemosynthesis, which is a strange word you probably haven't heard before. It looks like what other word that we have learned? Photosynthesis. So in photosynthesis, plants use what to make food? They use light. Photo means light. In chemosynthesis, these organisms use chemicals from their environment as the source of energy to make their own food. So it's a different version of being an autotroph. Yeah, so the word chemotherapy you may have heard in terms of a person being treated for cancer. Chemo means chemicals. Chemotherapy is when doctors use certain chemicals to destroy cancer cells. It's different than radiation treatment. That's a separate treatment. Chemotherapy is using certain chemicals to treat cancer cells.
My grandpa has radiation.
What's that?
My grandpa has radiation.
Yeah, it goes for radiation treatment. Yes, what my grandfather went for radiation treatment when he had prostate cancer as well. Yeah, it's common. There's those 2 common ways, surgery, radiation treatment, chemosynthesis, or chemotherapy. Yeah, so all those, we'll get there eventually. But yeah, some of those things have side effects because not only do they kill cancer cells and tumors and so forth, but sometimes they damage healthy tissue. And so there's side effects that go along with that. Got it? Should I? Yeah. Yeah, it's difficult, definitely. But the treatments are effective for killing cancer cells to help a person get better. John? I'm sorry? Prostate gland is a gland found only in men, a reproductive gland, and it's the most common type of cancer in men, is prostate cancer. We'll learn more about it too when we get to human body systems. Archaea, reproduction, they reproduce asexually, which, as we learned previously, means there's only one parent organism, and the offspring are copies. And basically, the organism just splits into two. It's called binary fission. The word binary means two parts. The word fission means to split, so it just splits in two. The original parent organism just kind of splits, divides, and then you have two archaea. The examples of archaea that we will talk about are these things called extremophiles. Do you remember what I said that meant? If they are extremophiles? Michael?
Isn't it like when you take with a certain amount of heat and stuff?
Yeah. Many of these archaea, some of them were first discovered living in very extreme conditions. Extreme heat, extreme cold, extreme salt conditions, extreme dry conditions, extremely acidic conditions. They've since been found lots of other places also, but this is kind of where they were first discovered. And so there's some names that scientists give to these that describe where they can live. Yours are a little different, don't worry about it. Thermophiles is the word for these archaea that can survive very hot conditions. You guys don't have this one, but it's called cryophiles. They live at low temperatures. Don't worry, you don't have to write it down. Acidophiles live in acidic conditions that most living organisms cannot tolerate. Xerophiles live in places where there's basically no water. Very, very dry conditions. And halophiles, they live in areas with very high concentrations of salt. And so scientists think that through their research, some of these archaea were probably some of the first forms of life that evolved on Earth. The early atmosphere of the Earth was much different than it is today. It's much more, different types of chemicals were present. And so these archaea had evolved under those conditions, okay, and then survived into modern day, still living in these extreme conditions. They've retained that ability. The last thing that we'll talk about today is bacteria. Again, it has its own domain, bacteria, its own kingdom. And bacteria, when we list this, it's going to look very similar to archaea. Now, there are differences between archaea and bacteria. We're not going to get into all of those differences. Differences in the cell membrane, differences in DNA, and the way certain pathways, metabolic pathways work. But bacteria are single cells, also prokaryotes. Some can be autotrophs, some are heterotrophs. So they have mixed nutritional methods. Now, like a plant cell, bacteria have a cell wall around them. Each cell is a cell wall, but it's kind of a different type of cell wall, made of different material. Do you remember what plant cells, their cell wall was made out of? What material?
The word tag?
Cellulose.
Oh, yes.
Cellulose. Bacterial cells are made out of other material. We're going to stop this. They also reproduce asexually through binary fission, like we just learned about. Here's some pictures. Bacteria from electron microscopes that are artificially colored. These red rods are bacteria. This stuff in yellow or orange, I guess, are bacteria. Bacteria are really small, much smaller than even single-celled protists. This is the tip of a pin, an electron microscope image. This orange stuff are all bacteria. And if we zoom in even farther, these orange rods are a type of bacteria called bacillus. But again, look at the scale. This is only 10 micrometers. So these are about 10 micrometers wide. That's really, really small. We would not be able to see those under our microscopes.
We did.
So bacteria are split into groups based on their shape. Some bacteria are shaped like rods. Okay? Those bacteria are called bacillus. That's the category. Some are spheres, little balls. Those are called coccus. And then some have this twisted shape. Those are called sporilia. Those are like the three main shapes of bacteria. And there's some prefixes that are sometimes added on. Strepto. Strepto means they're found in chains, linked together. Staphylo means they're in little clusters, like a cluster of grapes. So look at these pictures. This one is a bunch of these spheres linked together in a chain. Can you guess what it's called? Yes, Streptococcus. This is a bacteria that causes strep throat. This also spheres, but in little clusters. That's called Staphylococcus. That's what causes staph infections. So if you've ever heard of somebody having a staph infection, often a skin infection. Okay, those are clusters of these round spherical bacteria. This is E. coli. They are, what type of bacteria are E. coli?
Food.
What shape? They're rod shaped. They are bacillus bacteria. E. coli live in our digestive system, help us digest some foods, but also some types of E. coli can cause us to become sick. This is cyanobacteria. That's one of the photosynthetic bacteria. Sorry. Bacteria do move. Even though they're really small and single celled, they can move, and they do it using these long whip-like tails. They're called flagellum. This flagella sort of helps them move around. It's their means of what we call locomotion, moving around. Any questions about bacteria or archaea? All right, that's about the extent of what we're going to talk about with